You're listening to Alcoholics Alive, where recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous share their experience on how they live AA as a way of life. None of our participants get paid or speak for AA. Here are your hosts, Shank and Wayne. Welcome to Alcoholics Alive. We are, Shank, let's jump right into it. What is, what's our Upon Awakening reading today?
Our Upon Awakening, Season 10, Episode 8. Is this Episode 8?
Yes.
This comes from page XIX. In the book Alcoholics Anonymous, 4th edition, 2001. Is that 19?
Let's see here. That is 19. This would come from the foreword.
This is from the foreword.
To the second edition?
I believe so.
I love it. It's one of the best readings in the book.
So it says, as we discovered the principles by which the individual alcoholic could live, so we had to evolve principles by which AA groups and AA as a whole could survive and function effectively. It was thought that no alcoholic man or woman could be excluded from our society, that our leaders might serve but never govern, that each group was to be autonomous, and there was to be no professional class of therapy. There were to be no fees or dues. Our expenses were to be met by our own voluntary contributions. There was to be the least possible organization, even in our service centers. Our public relations were to be based upon attraction rather than promotion. It was decided that all members ought to be anonymous at the level of press, radio, TV, and films. And in no circumstances should we give endorsements, make alliances, or enter public controversies. This was the substance of AA's 12 traditions, which are stated in full on page 561 of this book.
There's a lot in that reading. So it's describing.
I was reading in the most recent, I want to say edition of the Grapevine magazine. There was an article in there that was about an AA member that also was bipolar, I believe, which used to be called manic depressive. And so it was a letter to AA members when you're dealing with someone with mental health. And to me, that kind of felt like a professional class of therapy.
Yep.
It just was very odd to read. Like, hey, my alcoholism is actually connected to my mental health, and AA members need to know and acknowledge that and help me through it.
Well, it says here we have no professional class of therapy. So I guess that's kind of not in line with that.
Yeah, it was just odd. And I'm not like agreeing or disagreeing that person who had 6 months, I believe, I read all of the articles in there, but I believe this specific person had 6 months. And it just seemed really odd for someone new to be calling the shots on what AA members should do to make them feel comfortable in AA when it comes to their mental health.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got us diverted already, but I just
it's
read
almost
that.
it's almost like an outside issue, right?
Whoa.
Yeah. Hey, I give you credit for reading the most recent copy of the Grapevine.
It's a tough read.
Yeah. See there, I mean, even though we point out the truth about stuff, we still make sure we participate and are informed. But that Grapevine is a little...
Hey, if you read At Wit's End, there's an interesting joke in there that I'm surprised is in there.
Yeah. It's racist, isn't it?
It seemed a little out there.
Yeah, well, read the latest copy of the Grapevine. It's called Higher Powered. You know what, though? There's only about 3% of the AA population even subscribes to it, so no one's reading it.
Just to be clear, I do not subscribe, but Jerry does. So he subscribes and then I read it, and I feel like that's a good deal.
So listen, that's right. I've got currently have 7 subscriptions to the Grapevine.
A lot.
And until they stop taking money from the reserve fund to fund it, I'm going to cancel these subscriptions, or I'm not going to renew them when they expire. That's
Well,
a better way to put it.
you better go ahead and cancel them because they auto renew you every year.
Good point. I'll go back and make sure I take my credit card information off the online thing. Oh my goodness. Hey, this is a great reading that gives us guidance on how to operate our group. I think it gives guidance on how GSO probably should operate and how our conference should operate. And we'll have more information next week on the conference. We have a fair amount of information about how it went, but we're going to, out of respect for delegates giving reports in the upcoming weeks, we're going to withhold some of those, some of our intel. But I can tell you, it didn't sound like all this was completely followed, and that kids were being kids.
Yep.
So anyway.
So I thought this was a great reading for our topic today, which I have affectionately named Self-Support or Self-Survival.
I like it.
We're going to break down the real contribution numbers, if you will.
Yeah, so I've got some numbers for you.
Well, it just seems to me like most things in AA, maybe that there are a few groups that are supporting GSO, probably even speaking about it, but definitely financially too.
Yeah. Well, so for years, I hear people talking about how AA's never really fully been self-supporting. You hear things like we always get most of our money from outside contributions. You hear that most of our revenue is literature sales. And the reality is there's truth to all of that. But we decided to maybe dig into the actual numbers. And so just some stats for you. This is based straight out of the 2024 final report from.
Okay, but it was the numbers from 2023.
That's correct. Good point.
Okay.
Yeah, these are 2023 numbers.
Okay.
And basically, in 2023, only 1/3 of the groups, registered groups, contributed to General Service Office. So the way those numbers break down is in 2023, there were 64,457 registered groups, and 21,000 sent a contribution. So,
But doesn't seem like, that's a lot of groups, but that doesn't seem like a lot of groups, does it?
it's not a lot of groups at all. It's very low.
Okay, and so I don't know, is this including, are there meetings that send money to GSO or probably just groups that do that?
Well, it's a good question. So, they try to vet through when they get a contribution.
Mm-hmm.
They try to vet through if it's an actual registered group or if it's an actual AA member.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's unclear or they can't validate it, they supposedly send the money back. Yep. So
Okay.
there's that.
If your check has been sent back to you, please email us.
Yeah. So I think for purposes of what we're doing today, we'll assume that they're registered groups
Okay.
that are given the contributions. So if you look at the number of registered groups that gave, on average, they gave $328 in 2023 per group.
So each time they gave, or what?
That's the total of what they gave for the whole year.
For the whole year.
Yeah. So every group that gave, it averaged out to be $328 per group for that year.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So total contributions in 2023 from groups was roughly $10.5 million.
And yet we're asking or telling the delegates to go back and in your report tell people to send more money.
Yeah, the delegates are going to be tasked after the conference this year to come back and educate us on inflation, educate us on why $1 or $5 wasn't enough and that you put in the basket. And their hope is that when they educate you on inflation, that you're going to give more in the basket.
But it seems to me that one of the issues here is it's not necessarily how much money we have. Of course, that's always going to be issue. Costs are rising. Sure. What are we doing with the money we have? How can we not operate on $10 million in contributions?
It's a good question. It's because we spend too much money. So here's the other side of that. Right. So we'll hold on to that thought because I think we should probably delve into that a little bit.
Okay.
Because, right, you always hear that we've never been self-supporting because of our literature contributions.
Right.
Or literature sales. So in 2023, we sold over $16 million in literature. And the net profit from that literature was $8.5 million, roughly. So we made $8.5 million profit on literature. And that's the money that the money that we used to operate. So 55% of the money that we used in 2023 to operate came from group contributions. 45% of it came from profit on literature. So if you follow just the strict letter of the tradition of tradition 7, and the idea of being self-supporting, based on that, we were not self-supporting by the voluntary contributions of groups and members. Because 45% of the money that we spent came from literature profit.
Okay, so who buys the literature? It's not just AA members.
No, it's not just AA members, right? I mean, treatment centers, nonprofit organizations, Amazon, Hazelden.
It's so interesting because so long as it is the AA approved, GSO printed, whatever you want to say, like GSO is still making money. Like we are still making money on literature sales no matter where it goes.
That's right.
But it sounds to me like non-alcoholics are footing the bill in a way. And sure, the literature may go to alcoholics or people that think they're alcoholics or someone in a treatment center, but
well, they are. Yeah, if you cut right down to it, there's lots of non-AA members buying our literature. Yep. So let me read a couple things to you, just since you brought that up. So people love to quote Bill Wilson.
they do.
We're going to quote him, but we're not going to try to tell you what we think he said. But we're just going to actually go based on what he actually said. So one of the first things that Bill wrote in 1946, this was in a grapevine. You can go back and read the article. He says a lot about self-support. It's called "The Safe Use of Money" is the title of the article. But one thing he put in there, he says, the voluntary contributions or pledges of AA members should be our principal and eventually our sole support. That this kind of self-support would always prevent our clubs and offices from getting out of hand because their funds could readily be cut off whenever they failed to serve us well. So that was in 46.
Wow.
So he's implying that group contributions should be our sole support. In 1957, he wrote an article, and in that article, he made this comment. It would be a very sad day for Alcoholics Anonymous if we ever had to depend on the sale of our books to non-alcoholics to pay our way.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. 1957, he wrote that. Yep. And then he wrote this one, and I'll be done with the Bill Wilson quotes. Our fellowship has, he wrote this in 67. Our fellowship has been completely self-supporting, declining all outside contributions. The total income has been derived from our own pockets. Then he says, we believe that AA ought to be self-supporting, and we think this ought to be the primary source of AA income, not literature sales.
Well, and here's the other thing, like, okay, so since we have been digging into all of these reports, literature sales are declining anyway.
And the profit is.
So, I mean, I guess like the attitude or the solution to that is to get the delegates to tell us we need to send more money and then to come up with all this new literature, rewrite Living Sober. Because it seems to me like even with the plain language book, there's always like this excitement of, oh, we're going to be able to help so many alcoholics, whether or not that is true. And so people will buy the book. We bought the book, right? Like we had several copies just so that we
Yep.
can read it, see what it was all about. So I do think that maybe there is like this excitement and this push initially when something new comes out that makes some money.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, is that spiritual? Is that a spiritual use of our funds?
Well, I don't think it is. No, I think it's business.
It sounds like business.
Yeah. So if you go by just what Bill wrote and said, and let's say we're averaging $10 to $11 million a year in group contributions, you would think that our goal would be to try to figure out how to operate on $10 million a year,
Yeah.
right? And solely operate on the contributions from the groups. So that would require cutting expense, and then sell the books at cost. I say sell the books at cost. I mean, right now they're making a 60% profit on books. So just simple math, if we sold $16 million in books, we made a little over $8 million on them. So if we operated differently, we could discount books and sell them more at cost, or just cover our expenses on it. But right now, I mean,
It just seems like this is, once again, you expect people. What I love about Alcoholics Anonymous and always have is when I was new and I literally had nothing, and I put myself in a position that everything was being taken away from me. I was going to prison. I had no money because I owed so much money. And for years it was that way, but when I stepped into Alcoholics Anonymous, it didn't matter who was there, who they were, if they were a judge, an attorney, a doctor, if they had more money than me. No one was expected to foot the bill for me to be there. And the people who had more money were not expected to carry the group and put $100 bill into the basket. Either the group survived or it didn't. And what it seems to me is like GSO is putting the pressure, or whomever it is putting the pressure on, okay, we'll put more money in, we'll inflation, well. And it just is separating people. It seems to me like it's separating people in a class of how much money you have, and looking around and seeing someone put $5 in the basket and someone putting a 20 in. And not that you should or shouldn't do that.
mm-hmm.
But it just seems like a big ask for a fellowship that is supposed to be spiritual in nature. And you're supposed to be able to come in there and it's an even playing ground.
Yep.
And
It doesn't feel like,
it sounds to me like when we're saying that non-alcoholics are purchasing a lot of the literature, and that's, what percentage did you say? That's 45%. That sounds like mom and dad or grandma paying our cell phone bill and our car payment and listen, I do not doubt that some people need help. This is not like a play on people's parents for trying to help them. I think parents want to see their kids succeed, right? Want them to do better than they did, whatever that may be. But when you walk into Alcoholics Anonymous, we're supposed to be self-supporting and learning something and being valuable members of society. It seems like mom and dad and grandma are still supporting AA as a whole.
It's a very good analogy, Shank. Yep.
It just is like so weird to me why we wouldn't want to put our money where our mouths are and maybe cut our expenses. I mean, Alcoholics Anonymous taught me how to do that. I'm in a much better place right now. There are a lot of factors, but a lot of it is because AA taught me how to have a prudent reserve personally, and my business taught me how to have a prudent reserve. When I wasn't able to work for 3 months because the world shut everything down, I was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where it has grown to such an extent, and the things that we're doing there have gotten so bloated that I think people are afraid to make tough decisions. People are afraid to take a really honest look at what's going on and say, hey, we don't need to do this. We don't need to do that. They should really look at what fits in with our primary purpose of actually helping an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And what can we afford to do? And make a tough decision. Stop living off of basically non-AA members and non-AA groups, and in some cases, probably charity. There was a rumor one time, I know I shouldn't bring this up, but there was a rumor one time that we used to be in cahoots with Hazelden, and when our revenue was down, we would convince Hazelden to make large book purchases. Now listen, if you're listening, I don't have any evidence that that's true, but it sounds good.
It sounds like it could be true.
You could see that something like that would happen. But anyway, to your point, we do need to stop living off of outside contributions,
and
and we are.
Something else that I think is interesting, like in my own home group, in discussing not supporting, which maybe we'll talk about that too, and not supporting GSO financially, having conversations about what does that look like. You know, I do know that some people just don't know what is covered by intergroup. If you have an intergroup, what is covered by district? What is GSO? Like, what do all of these little entities really do? Because we pulled out of our local intergroup and haven't looked back. It's going great. Our district, in talking about with people in my home group with women that I sponsor, they're just like, I'm like, yes, we can send it to district. We can still participate, but they're sending it straight to GSO because we have also had too much money at our district. So it all leads back to GSO, really. Everyone is so obsessed with sending all of the money to GSO for services that we may or may not agree with.
Yes. Yeah. So a lot of times districts, when they have a surplus, they'll send the money directly to GSO. Like our district recently sent $4,000 directly to GSO. Yeah. That was not the intended purpose of that money. When groups sent their money to districts, most of them already sent money to GSO.
Right.
So they don't expect that money to go back to GSO.
Right.
They expect it to be spent in the district.
Ding, ding, ding.
So that money should have been spent in the district and not sent to GSO. So now GSO is profiting off of, I say profit, they're benefiting from a district that couldn't figure out what to do with the money. There's probably lots of other stuff they could have done.
Well, and two, in speaking with people that have helped me in my sobriety with service and otherwise over the years, I explain all of this, like, hey, am I on track here? Okay, so we don't support X, Y, and Z. We think we need to kind of just help alcoholics show up and help alcoholics, no matter where they are, what their circumstances are. We don't need to give them a special pamphlet or a special book. Yes, yes, yes. And then having someone just say, yeah, I get all that, but I'm just old school, and that's what we've always done.
Yep.
I'm just like, what?
Yep.
What do you mean? So just send it anyway, even though spiritually we don't kind of align on all of these things and we don't agree that GSO should be doing certain things, but just send it anyway.
Well, it's easy and convenient. And unfortunately, that's what we migrate to nowadays. What's
So
easy
what,
and what's convenient.
well, once again, I believe it is our responsibility to talk about these things in our groups, have these conversations in our groups with our sponsees, with people we help, with people who ask, and not just say, okay, yeah, you're only 2 or 3 years sober. When you're 10 years sober, you'll get it.
Yeah.
Because it's not the easiest thing
No,
to have these conversations.
it's not. But to your point earlier, I think people listen maybe, well, what does this have to do with anything? Well, it's a spiritual thing. So we ask members to follow the seventh tradition. We ask groups to not take outside contributions. We ask members to be prudent with their finances, and we try to teach people to be self-supporting. But yet we don't expect that from GSO. That's the spiritual aspect of it. So, I mean, I guess a question would be, I think we've asked this question on several episodes. So should groups give to GSO? Or should they
Well,
stop until,
I mean, that's where spirituality and money meet or in the hat. And it would seem like, let's say that we are the minority of people who believe you shouldn't continue to financially support GSO when there's not trust there, they kind of release information as they want to, at least where I am. I don't feel like I've ever really gotten, in the 12 years I've been sober, I don't feel like I've ever really gotten a clear picture from my delegate at the assembly of what is going on.
yep,
And, the first few years of my sobriety, maybe I just didn't know. Maybe those people were doing an excellent job. But the last 5 or more years, I have a pretty good understanding, and I'm not hearing that in a report. So the reserve fund is shrinking. We're trying to make all this money from literature. We're asking members to give more money. I just don't really understand.
yeah. I so after just listening to this and looking at the info, it seems like it's a good time for groups and individuals to maybe take a pause on contributing and maybe even write a letter to GSO. Or, well, you would need to talk to your group first, obviously. And if you're giving as an individual, you ever done the birthday plan?
My first home group,
Stop it.
they had the birthday envelopes. Like I think you could send cash. You could send cash in them, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And I remember maybe doing it once because everyone else was like, oh, the birthday envelopes, the birthday envelopes. And I was just like, this is weird. I always thought it was just so strange. Now I was newly sober, so I don't know,
Yeah.
but
I haven't done it. I used to do it every year. It used to say give $1 for every year you're sober. And then if everybody did that, GSO wouldn't have any financial problems.
hmm
So, I mean, maybe it is the group's fault because they don't give more.
yeah.
But I
Well,
think
and
given the
I
bloat and the irresponsibility, they probably should stop giving.
I think I've asked this in previous episodes. We keep focusing so much on, what groups are giving, what percentage of groups are giving, how much, literature sales. Could it be that there are already several groups not contributing because they don't like what's going on?
There are. Yep.
So it's almost like instead of approaching it and say, hey, we see that only this percentage of groups are really giving. So what can we do? What's going on? We need to put a pause on things. Instead of like that open and clear communication, in my opinion, it's let's pump out more literature. Let's make sure everyone is inclusive and we're da da da. And it's the way of the world.
Yep. So I talked to two members that are in two other groups in other states. These are two very large groups,
Mm-hmm.
and they both have stopped giving. And they both wrote letters to GSOs saying why. And I can confirm at least one of them got a scathing letter back.
For what reason?
Yeah, I wish I had that letter. They wouldn't give it to me. And I think the other one hadn't gotten a response. And they basically were saying, hey, we're just pausing our contributions because you're drifting from principles. You've gotten away from being keeping things simple and gotten away from the basic primary purpose of what we're supposed to do. And, they don't like the lack of transparency into the financials and this kind of, have your head in the sand about actually what's going on. Then the other thing is, so I think that groups should probably stop giving or pause.
Mm-hmm.
What's the word principled pause?
A principled pause.
A principled pause until things get, a little better on track. The other thing I've often been curious about, so if only 30% of the groups are given,
Mm-hmm.
so are the other 70% already making that statement by not giving, or do they don't have the ability to give? Or
Well, right. I mean, you would imagine that, yes, where we live, we know of some rural groups that, A, probably don't care what is going on at GSO, but B, don't have the money to be sending it anyway. And there's still AA groups.
Yep.
You don't have to send any money anywhere to be an AA group.
That's right.
So just putting that out there, it is not a requirement for you to
It
send
is
any
not.
money anywhere to be an AA group, just to be clear. You can still participate and utilize all of AA services and not send $1.
Very good point.
So now that may not be the spiritual thing to do for some people, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That is a fact that it is not a requirement.
Yeah.
So, but there are a lot of groups that don't have the money to, do not care. I believe that there are probably a good chunk of groups that are not sending to make a statement. And
I
maybe
think
a
that's
letter is best. Many years ago, I would have said, oh, that's just like digging the knife in, or sending a letter is so passive aggressive or aggressive aggressive. And that's not how I see it today. I think it's important that they know, hey, we're not sending money and here's why.
yeah. Yeah, I think a letter from a lot of groups would maybe go a long way.
So what do you think should be in the
So,
letter?
well, I've got a letter.
Okay, we got our principled pause.
Yeah. You want me to read some of this letter to you?
Yeah, let's hear it.
It says, after careful reflection and discussion within our group, we have decided to temporarily suspend our financial contributions to the General Service Office. This decision is not made lightly, nor is it a rejection of AA or its vital service structure. Rather, it is a sincere expression of concern regarding several ongoing issues that we believe warrant greater attention and transparency. The lack of clear, accessible communication around the fellowship's current financial condition, including deficits and reserve fund depletion. A noticeable drift from AA's foundational principles, including our tradition of simplicity and focus on our primary purpose, to help the alcoholic who still suffers. Growing expenses and initiatives that appear to divert time, money, and attention from direct 12-step work. We believe a pause in contributions is a spiritual act of stewardship and accountability. We hope it serves as a loving nudge toward returning to our core values of transparency, financial prudence, and unflinching dedication to carrying the message.
That's pretty good.
Yep. It says we remain fully committed to AA as a whole and will continue supporting local services. We are open to restoring our contributions to GSO once we see meaningful steps toward addressing these concerns. So, If anyone wants a copy of that letter, let us know.
Just email us. And you can
But
change it to fit your circumstances.
that's right.
I do think it's important, though, because we have these figures, this information. Now, I'm not saying that they'll put that in the final report or they'll talk about it at the assembly or at the committee meetings or anything, but someone will be on notice. Someone will get that and read that,
Yep.
and just maybe consider it's not because of the lack of education of inflation.
Correct. So I guess to answer the original question that you asked, self-support or self-survival, I'm pretty confident in saying that we're not self-supporting through our own contributions.
Mm-hmm.
And that if groups were to stop giving money or pause their giving and even slow down on some of the literature sales or literature purchases, they'd be forced to do something. So I think we're in self-survival mode, and I think it's worse off than people think it is. And I think they're going to lose money on the international convention. Now, I know that's way off track, but
You're
anyway.
probably not wrong. Well, talk about it at your business meeting. Talk to your service sponsor if you have one. If you don't have a service sponsor, talk to someone who's been involved in service.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Talk to somebody with some experience.
With some experience.
And I think we should demand better transparency. You know what? I should say this. I think the financials that they put out reflect what's going on,
Yes.
but our trusted servants don't communicate actually what's in them
How
accurately.
about this? If you live in an area where you feel like your delegate gives you good information about what is going on, email us. Let us know that.
Yep.
Because I'm just wondering if, because I've been in this area my entire sobriety, I don't tend to think this is the case, and this is not to knock the people that do this service. I think it gets in a routine of being a certain way, and then that just continues because it's what people are used to.
Yep.
But, 10 minutes for a financial report is not enough, period.
No. It's not enough. No, they'll spend 30 minutes talking about travel and eating and pajama parties and committee shenanigans and 10 minutes on financials. It's not right.
Which, listen, I am interested in all of the shenanigans,
Yeah.
but not while we're doing
Offline.
business.
Yep. Yeah.
Have a table set up. I'll talk to you after. I'll talk to you before.
Yeah.
But you've pissed me off by not talking about the business of AA during the business portion of our assembly.
Yep. That's right.
Anyway,
Yep. And the other thing is we've got to stop being dependent on the literature sales.
yeah.
Yeah. It's just, Bill was clear on that. And the other thing is that stuff goes more digital.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to even see more literature sales going down and profit going down. And so let's figure it out.
Let's figure it out.
Shank, you want to move on to living sober shrapnel?
All right, we have some living sober shrapnel. Now buckle up, everyone.
I'm excited about this one. Let's see what you got.
If you only like shrapnel about half of the time, you probably just want to cut out right now. Email us, alcohol. Okay. This is our segment of Lore, Myth, and Sayings is written in the booklet, Living Sober. These all come from the 55th printing from 2024. Our first Living Sober shrapnel is bootlegger. Cool. So it says, those of us who began our sobriety while confined to a hospital or jail tried to change our daily paths so we would not encounter the institution's bootleggers so often.
Well, now I'm familiar with the term bootlegger.
Yep, me too.
I've used it. I used to buy stuff from a bootlegger.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they've used it here, those of us who began our sobriety while confined to a hospital or a jail tried to change our daily paths so we would not encounter the institution's bootleggers so often.
So in this part of the booklet, Living Sober, they're discussing, this is something interesting. They're discussing, how alcohol is temptation and blah, blah, blah. And then they're just making this connection of like, hey, even if you're freaking incarcerated or in a mental hospital, there's still going to be liquor there, pal.
I get it. Okay,
Like,
yes.
buckle up. You're going to encounter the bootlegger.
This is funny. So basically, watch out for the bootlegger in the hospital and the jail.
There you go.
We try to change our daily paths. I don't know if when I was in a hospital, I was in a daily path, but anyway.
Well, in prison, there was one area at the maximum security women's prison where a camera couldn't see you, and it was like a 2x2 little area.
Yeah.
That's where everyone would smoke the cigarettes the guards brought in. That's where they would throw the hooch on top of the dorm to ferment, and that's where people would drink. And I walked by it just fine.
Yeah, right. Didn't have any problems?
I surely did not.
Well, what's funny, now that you say that, when I was in that asylum,
Yep.
there were people in there that were like bringing stuff in, and there were people like sneaking off at certain times and coming back.
Oh, yeah.
And I never participated in any of it. I did fine. So, however, I like the term bootlegger.
Me too.
I'm not in favor of like getting rid of that term ever.
Me neither, but changing your daily path so you do not encounter the institution's bootlegger,
Scrap it.
out of here.
What's next?
Our next Living Sober shrapnel is hot buttered rum guzzlers.
Are you serious? Yeah. Nice.
All right, this is page 20 to 21. Trying to avoid taking a drink on a vessel loaded with beer drinkers, Tom Collins sippers, flask nippers, sangria lovers, or hot buttered rum guzzlers is much harder than simply going to other places and, for novelty's sake, doing new things that do not particularly remind us of drinking. So once again, love a list. Love a list. You cannot read a page in Living Sober without there being a list of some sort. So.
Now you can tell by reading this that Barry, the guy that wrote the book,
Yep.
he drank in some upper end places.
Ooh, he sure did.
He was in high society.
He sure. Tom Collins, flask nippers, sangria, hot buttered rum guzzlers.
That is
Now,
funny.
He did say beer drinkers to begin with, so that sounds like the
He did.
lower class.
And is he talking about a ship? A cruise? He says on a vessel? He's on a vessel loaded with beer drinkers. So I guess there were some 5th grade educated people there.
There you go.
Tom Collins sippers, flask nippers. Hot buttered rum guzzlers. You ever drank any hot buttered rum?
No, but hot buttered rum guzzler, I'm thinking, dang, maybe I missed out on something.
May have missed out on something. Hot buttered rum. Oh my God. I drank some Captain Morgan rum one time, but it had no hot butter in it.
Did you guzzle it?
Oh yeah. That's the only way to go. But that stuff is nasty.
Well, do you want to keep this one?
No, it's got to go.
It's out. It's out. So funny. Okay. Now, really, if you're easily offended, cut this podcast off right now.
This is the one?
This is from page 23. This is what old Barry had to say. To be sure, a few ice cream or candy addicts do find in their first sober months a bulge or roll developing here and there in the usual wrong places. But that seems a small price to pay for release from active alcoholism. Better to be chubby or pleasingly plump than drunk, right? Did you ever hear of anyone being arrested for fat driving?
Oh my God. Are you serious?
So this shrapnel is fat driving.
Fat driving.
And no, I actually have not ever heard of anyone being arrested for fat driving.
Listen, I cannot believe that someone, you know how they like made this real quick plea to change some of the words in 12 and 12, murder and rape and whatnot? I can't believe that somebody hadn't done that with this one. As sensitive and as woke as people are nowadays.
Well, I did make sure that I got all of these from the 55th printing, which was 2024, online.
Better to be chubby or pleasingly plump than drunk, right? Did you ever hear of anyone being arrested for fat driving? Oh my God, that is awesome.
Oh my! So obviously this one's got to go.
Well, I don't know. It talks about the candy addict.
The candy addict.
We do know that the use of sweets,
which is just very interesting. Ice cream or candy addicts.
This is weird. Man, where did he come up with this?
I'm
telling you, this guy.
This whole thing is just like, what is he talking about?
He was on that LSD.
He was on something.
He had to be.
He had a roll or a bulge develop and was very unhappy about it. He had body dysmorphia.
I'm going to start telling people, man, get up on the ice cream and the candy, bro. Don't worry about getting fat or getting a little bulge in the wrong place.
That's right. You can't be arrested for fat driving, my brother. Do you want a DUI or a fat driving ticket?
That's right. Give me a fat driving ticket any day. I'm scrapping it.
It's scrap. But you know what I was thinking? If it was fat, like PHAT, like have you ever heard anyone being arrested for fat driving, dog?
We should rewrite it that way. Yeah. Fat driving.
All right, well, those are out of there, so.
God, those things were nice. Hey, appreciate you listening to us today. Think about the principle of self-support, and if we should hold our office to the same standard that we hold our yourselves and your group. And stay tuned next week. We're going to have some info on the actual conference and a new Upon Awakening reading and some Living Sober Shrapnel. In the meantime, be free.
Freedom.
Thanks for listening. If you have a comment, suggestion, or just need help, you can email Shank and Wayne at freedom@alcoholicsalive.com. Remember, we're recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous, but we do not speak for Alcoholics Anonymous, nor do we get paid. Join us next week for another great episode.